All right, and welcome to another Rebel show. I know it's been a few weeks, took a little bit of time off, but it's all right. We're here. I'm doing these as I feel like it, which maybe is not a good thing, but I should be more consistent sometimes, but there's a lot going on. So I know everybody knows what's going on in the world right now, and there's varying opinions, and there's varying belief systems, and what I want to get across is that the body of Christ, the church, is really what's the key to moving away from all this junk. And I don't necessarily mean church buildings. I mean the people of the church. The pastors and the people of the church are key. And when the church itself, when the pastors themselves get away from teaching the core gospel and get away from what the church is supposed to be, well, then it's ineffective. And that's what we've seen through the last few years, or decades maybe, is churches not being effective in what they're trying to do. And, through this pandemic, it's time for the church to rise up and the church members to rise up. We are the salt and light of the earth. And if we don't stand up and say and do what needs to be done and what needs to be said, who is going to tell the truth? Who is going to do it? We can't be afraid of people that are going to say something about us or maybe think we're weird or something. You know what? They're weird. We're the ones that are normal. We're the ones that believe in a creator. So the church was meant to preach politics and national issues, and it needs to get back to that. That happened in the founding era. Churches actually talked about the issues of the day, and you would come to church and you would learn. The church was meant to be a place to learn about the issues from a biblical perspective. And we don't go to church and learn about a biblical perspective on the issues anymore. Some pastors do. I'm sure there's some out there that do. But mostly, you just come in and you get you can do it, get through the week message, and then you go home. And you don't know what's going on, and you vote for whoever, and it doesn't matter. Just leave me alone. And we got to get away from that. I believe that we'll have to answer to God for how we vote, or if we don't vote, or if the nation gets into turmoil, we'll have to answer. Why didn't you stand up and do something? Why didn't you stand up and say something? Why didn't you get involved? There's more to church than just going through the doors, raising your hands and shaking a few hands of the neighbor and stuff. There's more than that. There's the daily walk part where you teach your kids, and you maybe have to get involved in school, and you talk to your neighbor, friendly talk. You don't have to be best friends with them. I'm just saying the biblical life is more than just a one day a week thing. And I think government has made churches fear talking about politics. Like most churches are a 501c3 organization. That makes them tax exempt. And I believe I've learned through wall builders that churches are just tax exempt anyway. They don't need a 501c3. We have amendments that prevent government from getting involved in church, and churches have not kept that up. They've allowed government to hinder them. I heard a story about, I think it was an election in San Antonio, Texas, where the governor got elected. It may have been a mayor, got elected, and they wanted transcriptions of these various churches' messages. So they wanted the transcriptions of the messages just to make sure they agreed with them, or they were in line or whatever, or that they weren't talking politics. And the church fought it. But the point is, there are more people in those churches than that voted for that politician. So that shows us that the church members didn't vote. Why? Because a lot of pastors will tell churches, that's politics of the world. We don't need to do that. We need to stay out of the world. We're doing the Christian thing, and that's crazy. That's wrong. Because I believe if the church doesn't stand up now or very soon, there may not be a church at all anymore. If there's enough people in some of these churches in Texas to vote out a politician that's being corrupt, these are just church members. Christians need to stand up and vote. It's important. It's our time now. We don't have to be crazy. We don't have to be violent. We just have to be strong in our resolve in what we believe. Like I said, if the church doesn't stand up now, there may not be a freedom to have church anymore. It may be ripped from us, even though it's a God-given right. Think about this. And it's not something that's new. This has happened before. Stalin in the 30s, he removed the church in the Ukraine, back in the USSR. He removed them when he started taking over in the 30s. He tore them down, burnt them, and he repurposed the material to make other things. So once you let tyranny in and or socialism in and communism in, the Christians are going to be the first to be executed or whatever. So it's time now. I'm challenging everyone that's a Christian, if you're really a Christian, and if you're a pastor and you're worried about what the congregation thinks and you're afraid to lose members, maybe if you lose those members, that's a good thing. You want people that are going to stand up for truth. Are you going to stand up for truth? It's time now. Religion and our way of life is under attack. They're pulling down our monuments and they're attacking, like the Christians are already under attack all over the world. America is the only safe haven. It's barely that anymore. With these terrorist organizations that are out there. Antifa and Black Lives Matter, the organizations. They're terrorist organizations. They're the terrorist wing of the Democratic Party. They're the new Ku Klux Klan, and they're coming after everyone who doesn't think like them or act like them. In the Constitution, the first clause is the Establishment Clause, and it prohibited the government from establishing a national denomination. So you couldn't just come in and say America is going to be Methodist. That's how it is. That's what King Henry did, and that's not how our founders wanted it to be. You can be whatever denomination you want. So that's the first clause. The second clause is the Free Exercise Clause, prohibiting the government from interfering with the people's public religious expression and acknowledgement. And we're living in violation of that right now because the government can't tell a church, hey, you got to close down. You cannot worship. You cannot walk. You cannot sing. That's happened in California. You can't sing praise songs. And we're being violated. Who's going to stand up against this governor? Who's going to write him letters? Who's going to knock on his office door and say, hey, I demand an audience? Who? There's millions of Christians in California that don't vote. And if they did, they could switch California from a socialistic state back to a conservative state if they would vote. So our amendment rights are being violated right now. Is anyone upset about this? We should be angry about this right now. The Revolutionary War soldiers and the founders were angry enough to go to war with what was a short time ago their fellow British citizen. Crazy, right? So both clauses were to restrict the government, not the citizen. That's important to realize. Government's job is to protect the Constitution, not infringe on our lives. And that's exactly what's happening right now. The founders wanted the Bible taught in schools. They wanted religion in life because it's a way to curb evil, right? So like Benjamin Rush, he said in reference to removing the Bible from schools, I lament that we will waste so much time and money in punishing crime and take so little time to prevent them. So we're focusing on punishing crime and not preventative. That's what the church should be. The church should be the people's moral compass, the preventative. And it's not. It's not at all. Noah Webster said, all the miseries and evils which men suffer from vice, crime, ambition, injustice, oppression, slavery, and war proceed from their despising or neglecting the precepts contained in the Bible. If people will self-police themselves, you don't need laws. You don't need a lot of laws. John Adams, our Constitution was made for immoral and religious people. It's talking about self-policing. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So if you don't take your responsibility to take a step back and say, I'm going to limit my behavior, I'm not going to rob, I'm not going to go out and do all these crimes, you don't need the laws. You're going to let the Bible work. Here's a Charles Finney quote, and it's quite long, but it's very, very good. If there is a decay of conscience, the pulpit is responsible. If the public press, the media, lacks moral discernment, the pulpit is responsible. If the church is degenerate and worldly, wow, we see that nowadays, degenerate and worldly, the pulpit is responsible. If the world loses its interest in Christianity, the pulpit is responsible. Wow, all these things are very common. If Satan rules in our halls of legislation, the pulpit is responsible. If our policies become so corrupt that the very foundation of our government are ready to fall away, the pulpit is responsible for it. And that's the truth. And I just want to say, if Satan rules in the halls of legislation, and that's so true, socialism is evil. The Bible says that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and that's what socialism is. It'll steal your wealth, it'll destroy your livelihood, and it'll kill millions. It's done it all over the world. I think 54 nations have tried this, and it's been the same type of massacre all the time. The church is responsible. Pastors have to stand up now. People have to be willing to fight for their life and give their life if necessary. Or what happens? The church is too concerned with other things and have lost the true meaning of the Gospels. It's hard to reach nations in a building. So I encourage the church to get out there, be who we need to be, get on school boards, write politicians, stand for the truth. Don't be scared or forced into things by tyrannical governors. In Colorado, the governor thinks he's God and he can just write law. It's stupid. It's not how we live. It's not what we do. We stand up now, or we may not have a chance to stand anymore. Maybe the next time we stand, it'll be in front of Jesus. Prematurely. So, it's the church's time to rise. So those of you out there that are the church, let's do this. We're greater than them. We have someone greater in us than the world does. So, thank you very much.